In a quiet research lab hidden in the dry lands of Arizona, Dr. Emily Carter worked late into the night. She was a scientist who loved solving mysteries, especially ones that involved space. Her partner, Daniel Brooks, sat across from her, his eyes glued to a computer screen. Together, they were studying a strange rock that had fallen from the sky just weeks earlier. The rock wasn't like any meteorite they had seen before. It had odd markings carved into its surface, lines and shapes that looked too perfect to be random. Emily leaned closer to the rock, her fingers tracing the grooves lightly. "These patterns," she said, glancing at Daniel, "they're not natural. Someone, or something, made them." Daniel raised an eyebrow, but didn't look up from his work. "You think aliens carved this thing?" "Come on, Emily. That's a big leap." "It's not impossible," Emily replied firmly. "We found stranger things out there. Just because we don't understand it doesn't mean it's not real." She turned back to the rock, her mind racing. What if these markings weren't just decorations? What if they held a message? The two scientists spent hours analyzing every detail. They used special tools to scan the rock for anything unusual. At first, nothing stood out. But then, something extraordinary happened. Deep inside the rock, hidden beneath layers of mineral deposits, they discovered something incredible. A map. It wasn't like any map you'd find on Earth. This one showed stars, planets, and strange symbols connecting them. This changes everything," Emily whispered, staring at the glowing image on her screen. "It's a star chart." Daniel finally looked up, his skepticism fading. "If this is accurate, it points to a specific location in space, somewhere far away." "But why?" Emily asked, her voice filled with wonder. "Why would someone send us a map? And who are they?" Their discovery quickly caught the attention of higher-ups. Within days, Dr. Alan Hayes, a top official at NASA, arrived at the lab. He was a serious man with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. After reviewing their findings, he agreed the map was significant. "This could be the most important discovery in human history," he said, pacing the room. "But we need to move carefully. If this leads us to intelligent life, we can't afford to make mistakes." Emily and Daniel were tasked with decoding the map further. As they worked, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a message. It felt like an invitation, or maybe even a warning. Late one night, as she stared at the star chart, a thought struck her. "What if this isn't about finding them?" She murmured aloud. "What if it's about where we came from?" Daniel looked up from his notes. "You mean, like our origins?" "Exactly," Emily said, excitement bubbling inside her. "What if humans aren't originally from Earth? What if we were brought here, from somewhere else?" The idea was shocking, even to her. But the more she thought about it, the more it made sense. The map seemed to point to a planet very similar to Earth, but billions of years older. Could that be where humanity truly began? As the team prepared to share their findings with the world, Emily knew their lives, and possibly the fate of humanity, was about to change forever. The news of the mysterious star chart spread quickly among the scientific community. Dr. Alan Hayes called a meeting at NASA headquarters to discuss the next steps. Along with Emily Carter and Daniel Brooks, he invited two new experts to join the team. Rachel Bennett, an astrophysicist known for her work on distant galaxies, and Jack Monroe, an engineer who specialized in space exploration technology. The group gathered in a small conference room filled with maps, charts, and glowing computer screens. Rachel was the first to speak. "If this map is accurate," she said, pointing to the star chart displayed on the wall, "then it's leading us to a planet that looks almost identical to Earth, but much older. Billions of years older." Jack nodded thoughtfully. "That raises a big question. Why would someone send us directions to a place like that? And why now?" Emily leaned forward, her eyes bright with excitement. "What if it's not just about finding another planet? What if it's about finding our roots? Our origins?" She paused, letting the idea sink in. Think about it. If humans didn't start on Earth, then maybe we came from somewhere else. Maybe this map is pointing us back to where it all began. Daniel frowned. That's a huge assumption. We don't have any proof yet. For all we know, this could be some kind of trap. Alan Hayes raised his hand to quiet the debate. We need evidence before we jump to conclusions. But one thing is clear. This discovery is too important to ignore. We need to investigate further. The team decided to build a probe, a small, unmanned spacecraft designed to travel through space and gather information. Using advanced technology, they programmed the probe to follow the star chart's coordinates and take photos along the way. It would be a long journey, but the probe was equipped with everything it needed to survive the trip. Months pass as the team waited anxiously for the probe to reach its destination. Finally, one evening, the data began to arrive. The images were breathtaking. The planet looked eerily familiar: blue oceans, green forests, and swirling white clouds. But there was something strange about it too. Scattered across the surface were massive structures that didn't look natural. They were geometric shapes, perfectly aligned, as if built by intelligent hands. As the team studied the pictures, they noticed something even more astonishing. Moving figures appeared in the distance. They were humanoid, standing upright, walking on two legs, but they didn't look exactly like modern humans. Their bodies were taller, their movements smoother, and their skin had a faint glow under the alien sun. This changes everything," Rachel whispered, her voice trembling with awe. "They're human-like, but different. Advanced." Jack shook his head in disbelief. "Are you saying these are our ancestors?" "It's possible," Emily replied softly. "Maybe they're the ones who brought life to Earth, or maybe they're the reason we exist at all." The implications of the discovery weighed heavily on everyone. If these beings were responsible for humanity's existence, then the history books would need to be rewritten. But there were also dangers to consider. What if these creatures weren't friendly? What if they saw humans as a threat? Alan Hayes broke the silence. "We can't stay here and speculate. We need to go there ourselves, to see them face to face." The room fell quiet as the weight of his words sank in. Sending humans into deep space was risky, especially when so little was known about the destination. But the team agreed it was the only way to uncover the truth. Over the next few weeks, plans were drawn up for a manned mission. A spacecraft, named *Odyssey*, would be built specifically for the journey. It would carry a small crew, including Emily, Rachel, Jack, and a military advisor to ensure safety. As the preparations began, Emily couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and fear. She knew they were stepping into the unknown, venturing into territory no human had ever explored. But she also felt a deep sense of responsibility. Whatever they found out there, it would change the course of human history forever. The day of the launch finally arrived. The spacecraft *Odyssey* stood tall on the launch pad, gleaming under the bright Arizona sun. It was a marvel of modern engineering, built to withstand the harsh conditions of deep space and equipped with everything the crew might need for their long journey. Emily Carter stood at the base of the ship, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nervousness. Beside her were Rachel Bennett, Jack Monroe, and Lieutenant Sam Parker, the military advisor assigned to ensure the mission's safety. As they prepared to board, Emily glanced back at the small crowd gathered to see them off. There were no cheering fans or waving flags. This mission was top secret, known only to a handful of people. But she could see the worried faces of her family in the distance. Her younger brother held up a sign that read, "Bring back answers," making her smile despite the tension in the air. Once inside the spacecraft, the crew strapped themselves into their seats. The countdown began, each second feeling like an eternity. When the engines roared to life, the force pressed them back into their chairs as the ship lifted off the ground. Through the small windows, they watched Earth shrink behind them until it became just a tiny blue dot in the vast blackness of space. The journey was long and mostly quiet. Days turned into weeks as the Odyssey traveled through the starry void. The crew spent their time running tests, checking equipment, and preparing for what lay ahead. Emily often found herself staring out the window, wondering about the beings they might meet. Were they friendly, hostile, or something entirely different? Finally, after months of travel, the crew approached their destination. As the planet came into view, everyone gasped. It was even more beautiful than the probe's images had shown. Towering forests stretched across the horizon, rivers sparkled like silver threads, and the sky glowed with soft hues of pink and gold. But what caught their attention most were the strange structures scattered across the landscape. They looked ancient yet advanced, their shapes too precise to be natural. "This is it," Rachel said softly, her voice filled with awe. "This is where it all began." The crew landed the Odyssey near one of the structures, a massive pyramid-like building made of smooth, shimmering stone. As they stepped onto the alien soil, they felt a strange energy in the air, almost electric. Everything around them seemed alive, buzzing with a quiet hum they couldn't quite explain. It didn't take long for them to encounter the inhabitants. At first, the beings kept their distance, watching the crew from the shadows of the trees. They moved gracefully, their elongated limbs gliding effortlessly over the ground. Their skin had a faint glow, and their large, almond-shaped eyes seemed to hold a depth of wisdom far beyond human understanding. Emily raised her hand slowly, palms open, to show she meant no harm. One of the beings stepped forward hesitantly, tilting its head as if studying her. Then, without warning, it reached out and touched her hand. The contact sent a warm sensation through her body, and suddenly, images flooded her mind. Pictures of stars, planets, and strange machines. It was as if the being was trying to communicate. "They're trying to tell us something," Emily said, turning to the others. "They're not hostile. I think they want to help us understand." Over the next few days, the crew worked to build trust with the beings. Communication was slow and difficult at first, but they began to exchange simple ideas through gestures and drawings. The beings showed them tools, artifacts, and symbols etched into the stone walls of their buildings. Each discovery brought the crew closer to unraveling the mystery of their origins. But not everyone was convinced of the beings' intentions. Sam grew increasingly wary, his military training making him suspicious of anything he couldn't fully understand. "We don't know what they really want," he muttered one night as the crew reviewed their findings. "They could be luring us into a trap." Emily shook her head. "They've given us no reason to fear them. If anything, they seem curious about us, just like we are about them." Despite Sam's doubts, the rest of the crew remained hopeful. For the first time in history, humans were face to face with beings who might hold the key to their past. Whatever happened next, they knew they were part of something much bigger than themselves. As the days passed, the crew of the Odyssey grew more comfortable with the beings they had encountered. The human-like creatures, who seemed to glow faintly in the dim light of their world, began showing signs of trust. They led the crew deeper into their settlement, revealing structures that were both ancient and advanced. Towering stone monoliths stood like silent guardians, covered in intricate carvings that told stories of their history. Emily Carter spent hours studying these carvings, trying to piece together their meaning. With help from Rachel Bennett, she sketched the symbols into her notebook, comparing them to Earth's earliest forms of writing. "These look similar to Sumerian cuneiform," Emily said one evening as the team gathered inside the spacecraft to share their findings. "But they're older, much older." Jack Monroe nodded thoughtfully. "So these beings might have influenced early civilizations on Earth, maybe even taught our ancestors how to write." "It's possible," Rachel added. "But we need more evidence before we jump to conclusions." The beings continued to communicate through gestures and images, sharing glimpses of their past. One day they brought the crew to a large circular chamber deep underground. The walls were covered in glowing patterns that shifted and changed as if alive. When Emily touched one of the patterns, a surge of energy coursed through her, and vivid images filled her mind. Images of stars exploding, planets forming, and life spreading across barren worlds. "They're showing us their journey," Emily said breathlessly when she returned to the surface. "They've been traveling through space for millions of years, planting life wherever they go." Lieutenant Sam Parker listened silently, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. He still didn't trust the beings, no matter how peaceful they seemed. "Why are they telling us this?" he asked sharply. "What do they want from us?" "They're not asking for anything," Emily replied. "They're just sharing their story. Don't you see? This could be proof that humanity owes its existence to them." Sam shook his head. "Or maybe they're setting us up. What if this is all part of some plan to take over Earth?" His words created tension among the group. While Emily, Rachel, and Jack believed the beings' intentions were good, Sam's paranoia made them question everything. The divide between them grew wider as time went on. Despite the disagreements, progress was made. The crew learned that the beings called themselves the First Humans, a name that sent shivers down Emily's spine. Through trial and error, they managed to exchange basic ideas using drawings and gestures. The First Humans referred to Earth as the Seed Planet and spoke of it with reverence, calling it a success in their long experiment to spread intelligent life. One evening, as the sun set in hues of orange and purple, Emily sat alone near the edge of the forest, watching the First Humans move gracefully among the trees. She felt a strange connection to them, as if she were meeting distant relatives after a lifetime apart. A young First Human approached her, holding out a small object, a smooth stone etched with familiar symbols. "For you," the being seemed to say, placing the stone in her hand. Emily examined it closely, recognizing the markings as a map of Earth's solar system. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized the gesture was one of goodwill. These beings weren't enemies, they were family. When she returned to the ship, she showed the stone to the others. "This isn't about conquest or control," she said firmly. "It's about understanding where we came from. We can't let fear ruin this chance." Rachel and Jack agreed, but Sam remained unconvinced. His suspicions only deepened when he discovered something unsettling, a device hidden aboard the Odyssey *. It was small, almost unnoticeable, and clearly placed there by the First Humans. "What is this?" Sam demanded, holding up the device. "Are they spying on us?" Emily took the object gently, examining it. "I don't think so. It might be a gift, or a tool to help us communicate better." Sam clenched his fists. "You're too trusting, Emily. We don't know what they're capable of." The argument ended without resolution, leaving the group divided. As the days turned into weeks, the weight of their mission, and the secrets they uncovered, began to wear on them. For every step forward, there was a reminder of how much they still didn't know. And lurking beneath the surface was the growing fear of what might happen if things went wrong. Tensions aboard the Odyssey * reached a breaking point as the crew struggled to agree on their next steps. Emily Carter spent most of her time with the First Humans, learning more about their culture and history. She believed they were peaceful beings who had shared their knowledge freely. But Lieutenant Sam Parker's distrust only grew stronger. He insisted the small device found on the ship was proof that the First Humans couldn't be trusted. "They've been watching us since we got here," Sam said during one heated discussion inside the spacecraft. "Why else would they plant that thing on board?" Emily sighed, trying to stay calm. "It's not a weapon or a spy tool. It could be some kind of translator. Maybe they're trying to help us communicate better. Or maybe it's a way to track our movements," Sam shot back. "We don't know what they're planning. For all we know, this whole thing is a trap." Rachel Bennett stepped in, her voice firm but gentle. "We can't let fear dictate our actions. So far, they've done nothing to harm us. If anything, they've gone out of their way to welcome us." Jack Monroe nodded in agreement. "Sam, "You're being too cautious. We came here to learn, not to accuse them of something without evidence." But Sam wasn't convinced. His military training taught him to expect the worst, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the crew was walking into danger. The divide between him and the others deepened, creating an uneasy atmosphere. Meanwhile, Emily continued to work closely with the first humans. One day, they led her to a massive stone structure at the edge of the settlement. Inside, she found rows of strange artifacts, tools, crystals, and glowing orbs that pulsed with energy. The first humans gestured for her to touch one of the orbs. Hesitant but curious, she placed her hand on its surface. Instantly, a flood of images filled her mind. Scenes of Earth millions of years ago, lush jungles teeming with life, and primitive human-like creatures taking their first steps. "They showed me our beginning," Emily told the crew later that evening. "They didn't just plant life on Earth. They guided it. They helped shape our evolution." Rachel listened intently, her eyes wide with wonder. "So, they really are our creators?" "Yes," Emily replied softly. "And they see us as their children." Sam scoffed. "Children? Or experiments? You heard what they said about Earth. They call it a seed planet. That doesn't sound like love. It sounds like manipulation." His words hung heavy in the air, planting seeds of doubt even in those who wanted to trust the first humans. Jack frowned, rubbing his temples. "This is getting complicated. We need to figure out why they brought us here before things spiral out of control." The answer came sooner than expected. The following morning, the first humans gathered around the crew, their expressions serious. Through gestures and symbols, they conveyed a message. They intended to return to Earth, not as visitors, but as settlers. "They want to reclaim their creation," Rachel whispered, translating the meaning behind their signs. "They think humanity has grown too reckless, too destructive. They believe it's time for them to take back what they started." Panic spread among the crew. If the first humans returned to Earth, it could mean disaster for modern humans. Their advanced technology and superior knowledge made them nearly unstoppable. "We have to stop them," Sam said firmly. "If they go to Earth, they'll wipe us out." Emily shook her head, desperation in her voice. "No, we can reason with them. There has to be another way." But Sam had already made up his mind. While the others slept, he sneaked into the ship's control room and activated a hidden failsafe mechanism, a program designed to destabilize the wormhole connecting Earth to this distant planet. Once triggered, the wormhole would collapse, severing the link forever. When the crew discovered what he had done, chaos erupted. Emily confronted him angrily. "How could you do this without consulting us? This isn't your decision to make." "It's done," Sam said coldly. "Better to lose contact than risk losing humanity." As alarms blared and the ground trembled beneath their feet, the first humans realized something was wrong. Their glowing eyes narrowed as they approached the crew, their once friendly demeanor replaced by suspicion. The fragile trust built over weeks was shattered in moments, and the stage was set for a confrontation that none of them were prepared for. The betrayal by Sam Parker ignited a firestorm of anger and confusion among the first humans. Their glowing eyes darkened, and their calm demeanor turned to suspicion. They surrounded the crew, their movements no longer graceful but sharp and deliberate. Emily Carter stepped forward, her hands raised in a gesture of peace, but the tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. "What have you done?" One of the first humans seemed to ask, pointing toward the Odyssey asterisk. Though they didn't speak aloud, their meaning was clear through gestures and expressions. Emily's heart raced as she tried to explain. "We didn't all agree with this. He acted alone. Please, give us a chance to fix it." But Sam stood firm, his face pale but resolute. "I did what I had to do," he said, his voice low but steady. "If they go to Earth, they'll destroy everything we've built. This was the only way to protect our people." The first humans exchanged glances, their silent communication impossible for the crew to decipher. Then, without warning, they moved swiftly, surrounding the spacecraft. Jack Monroe instinctively reached for a tool on his belt, ready to defend himself, but Rachel Bennett grabbed his arm. "Don't make it worse," she whispered urgently. For a moment, it seemed like violence might break out. The first humans' glowing forms radiated an energy that felt both powerful and dangerous. Emily knew they were capable of far more than the crew could imagine, and that made them unpredictable. "Please," Emily pleaded, stepping closer to the leader of the group. "We came here to learn, not to fight. Let us work together to find another solution." Her words seemed to pause the escalating tension. The leader tilted its head, studying her with those deep, unreadable eyes. After a long silence, it gestured for the crew to follow them back into the settlement. Inside the stone chamber where they had first communicated, the first humans revealed something shocking. On a large, glowing screen embedded in the wall, they displayed images of Earth, modern cities sprawling across landscapes, factories spewing smoke into the sky, oceans choked with plastic. It was a grim portrait of humanity's impact on their home planet. "They're showing us what they see," Rachel murmured, her voice trembling. "They think we failed." Emily nodded, understanding dawning on her. "They wanted to return to Earth because they believe we can't take care of it anymore. They see themselves as guardians, not conquerors." Sam clenched his fists. "And what gives them the right to decide our fate?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. The first humans didn't respond directly, but their body language conveyed a mix of disappointment and determination. They weren't just upset about Sam's actions. They were frustrated with humanity as a whole. As the hours passed, the crew worked frantically to reverse the wormhole collapse sequence. Jack and Rachel focused on the technical side, while Emily tried to rebuild trust with the first people. But time was running out. The ground shook periodically, signaling the destabilization of the portal. Each tremor reminded them of how close they were to being stranded or worse. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Jack shouted, "I've got it. I've slowed the collapse, but we need more time to stabilize it completely." The first humans watched silently, their glowing forms flickering faintly as if reflecting the uncertainty in the air. Emily approached their leader once more. "We can fix this together," she said, "but you have to let us stay long enough to finish." For a moment, it seemed like the first humans might refuse. Then, slowly, the leader nodded. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a temporary truce. But it was enough. The crew returned to the Odyssey *, working tirelessly to repair the damage Sam had caused. Outside, the first humans gathered, their glowing figures casting eerie shadows against the alien landscape. As the wormhole stabilized, Emily couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. She had come so far, learned so much, yet now they were on the brink of leaving it all behind. When the repairs were finally complete, the crew prepared to depart. The first humans stood at a distance, watching silently as the engines of the Odyssey * roared to life. Emily looked back one last time, meeting the gaze of the leader. In that moment, she saw not anger or hatred, but hope. Hope that humanity might still prove itself worthy of the gift they had been given. And then, with a flash of light, the Odyssey * vanished into the stars, carrying its crew back to Earth, and leaving behind a mystery that would haunt them forever. The journey back to Earth was tense and quiet. The crew of the Odyssey * sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Emily Carter stared out the small window, watching as stars streaked past in blurs of light. Her mind replayed the events on the distant planet, the first humans' disappointment, Sam's betrayal, and the fragile truce that had allowed them to escape. She couldn't shake the feeling that they had left something important unfinished. Rachel Bennett broke the silence first. "Do you think we made the right choice, leaving like that?" Jack Monroe sighed, leaning back in his seat. "We didn't have much of a choice. If the wormhole collapsed completely, we'd be stuck there, or worse." "But what about them?" Rachel pressed. "What happens now? Do they still plan to come to Earth? No one answered. The question hung heavy in the air, unanswered and unsettling. Sam Parker sat apart from the group, his face unreadable. He hadn't spoken much since activating the failsafe, and when he did, it was only to defend his actions. "I did what I thought was best," he muttered again, almost to himself. They weren't going to listen to reason. Emily turned to look at him, her voice firm but calm. "Maybe they would have if you'd given them a chance. Instead, you destroyed the trust we worked so hard to build." Sam met her gaze for a moment before looking away. "Trust doesn't matter if they're planning to take over our planet." The argument ended there, unresolved. The crew spent the rest of the journey preparing reports and organizing their findings. They knew their return would bring scrutiny from world leaders and scientists alike, but none of them could agree on how much to reveal. Should they tell the truth about the first humans and their intentions, or should they keep certain details hidden to avoid panic? When the Odyssey finally touched down in the Arizona desert, they were greeted by Dr. Alan Hayes and a team of officials. Cameras flashed and questions flew as the crew stepped out of the spacecraft, but they gave no answers, only promising a full briefing later. Behind closed doors, the real discussion began. Alan listened intently as Emily recounted their encounters with the first humans. His expression grew darker with each detail. "So they see themselves as caretakers of Earth?" he asked, his voice low. "Yes," Emily replied. "But they also believe humanity has failed in its responsibility. That's why they wanted to return, to fix what we've broken." Sam interrupted, his tone sharp. "And that's exactly why I stopped them. If they think they can just waltz in and take over, they're wrong. Humanity deserves a chance to solve its own problems." Rachel shook her head. "It's not that simple. What if they're right? What if we have failed? Maybe their intervention isn't about control. It's about survival." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed her words. Jack spoke up next. "Either way, we need to prepare. If the first humans decide to come here despite the collapsed wormhole, we'll need a plan." Ellen nodded slowly. "Agreed. For now, we'll keep this information classified." Officially, the mission was a success in gathering data about extraterrestrial life. Privately, we'll start working on contingency plans. As the meeting ended, Emily lingered behind. She felt torn between loyalty to her crew and guilt over leaving the first humans behind. She approached Alan, her voice soft but urgent. "We owe them more than secrecy. They're not just aliens. They're part of our history, our family." "I understand," Alan said gently. "But sometimes protecting humanity means making difficult choices. Trust me, I don't take this lightly." Later that night, Emily sat alone in her quarters, staring at the stone etched with symbols that the first humans had given her. It was a reminder of everything they had shared, and everything she feared might be lost. She recorded a private message, detailing everything they had discovered, and hid it where it could be found in the future. If nothing else, she wanted to ensure the truth wouldn't vanish entirely. As she lay down to sleep, exhaustion weighing heavily on her, Emily whispered into the darkness, "I hope we're ready for whatever comes next." But deep down, she wasn't sure anyone truly was. Months passed after the crew's return to Earth, but the weight of their mission never left them. Emily Carter found herself unable to move on from what had happened. She spent her days poring over notes, sketches, and recordings from their time with the first humans. The glowing stone they had given her sat on her desk, a constant reminder of the bond she had felt, and the trust she feared they had broken. The world moved on, as if nothing had changed. Official reports described the mission as a groundbreaking exploration of deep space, omitting any mention of intelligent life or humanity's extraterrestrial origins. To the public, it was just another step forward in science. But for Emily and the others, it was so much more. They carried the secret of human beginnings and the fear of what might come next. Rachel Bennett threw herself into research, studying the symbols and artifacts the crew had brought back. There's still so much we don't understand, she told Emily during one late-night conversation. If we could decode all of this, maybe we find a way to communicate with them again. Jack Monroe worked alongside engineers to improve space travel technology, preparing for the possibility that Earth might one day need to defend itself. He didn't share Sam's paranoia, but he agreed that being unprepared was dangerous. If the first humans decide to come here, he said, we can't rely on luck to stop them. Sam Parker, however, became increasingly withdrawn. His actions on the mission had saved humanity, at least in his mind, but the cost weighed heavily on him. He avoided the others, retreating into solitude whenever possible. Some nights, he stared at the stars, wondering if the first humans were watching, waiting for their chance to return. One evening, Emily drove out to the Arizona desert where it all began. Standing atop a hill overlooking the barren landscape, she gazed at the night sky. The stars twinkled faintly, distant, and unreachable. Yet she couldn't help but feel connected to them, to the first humans who had once guided humanity's path. Her thoughts drifted to the message she had hidden before leaving the mission behind. It contained everything. The truth about the first humans, their intentions, and the fragile thread of hope she clung to. She wondered if future generations would ever find it, or if it would remain buried forever. As she stood there, a sudden breeze swept across the desert, carrying with it an odd sensation. For a brief moment, she felt the same warmth she had experienced when touching the glowing orb on the alien planet. Images flashed in her mind. Stars, planets, and the faces of the first humans. Then, as quickly as it came, the feeling vanished. Emily blinked, shaken but calm. She didn't know if it was real or just her imagination, but it gave her a sense of peace. The first humans hadn't abandoned them, not entirely. Somewhere out there, they were still watching, waiting, and perhaps hoping for humanity to prove itself worthy. When she returned home, she wrote one final entry in her journal. We may have been created by their hands, but our destiny is ours to shape. If we rise to the challenge, if we learn to care for our world instead of destroying it, maybe we'll earn their respect. Maybe then, they'll see us not as failures, but as equals. Years later, as humanity continued to explore the stars, whispers of the first humans persisted. Some dismissed them as myths, while others believed they were guardians watching over Earth. Emily never stopped searching for answers, even as age slowed her steps. She knew the truth would surface eventually, whether through discovery or necessity. And so, beneath the endless expanse of the cosmos, humanity carried on, its past intertwined with mysteries yet unsolved. The story of the first humans became both a warning and a promise that the choices made today would determine the legacy of tomorrow.